Another way to factor is factor by grouping. So as a student, your teacher right now is throwing all these different types of ways of factoring out at you. How do you know as a student which one to use? Well, the difference of squares, you're looking at two things that are usually squared, but factor by grouping, I'd say most of the time you're going to see four terms. Okay? More importantly, well, not more importantly, but just as importantly, you see that they're in order from v cubed to v squared to v to no v. Okay? So four terms, think factor by grouping. Otherwise, it's really, really hard to factor. And what you do is you lump the first two together and you lump the last two together and you see what they have in common. So let's look at the first two. What do they have in common? Well, I know they have a v squared in common, so I can take that out. What else do they have? Let's see, 56 and 49 are both divisible by 7, so I can take the 7 out. What does that leave me with? It leaves me with an 8v and plus 7. Okay, let's make sure that works. Go backwards. We get our 56v cubed, our 49v squared. But I made one serious mistake. We're going to go back and fix. This should be subtraction. Okay. Now, let's focus on the second part. What do they have in common? Well, they don't have a v in common, but they do have, let's see, 48 and 42 are both divisible by 6. So I can pull out a 6, leaving me with what? Let's see, 8v, that gets me back to the 48v minus 7. Now, if you stop here and you look at it, you should notice something. You should notice that the expression inside the parentheses is the same, which helps us move to one last step, which is pretty cool. We can rewrite this as a set of two parentheses, 7v squared plus 6 times the quantity they had in common. So this method is very useful, especially since lately we've been setting things equal to 0 if it's in the denominator. It's easy to solve for v at this point. Okay, so that's the first one. Now let's take a look at a little bit more difficult of a problem, which would be number 7. So we're going to compare these two terms, and we're going to compare these two terms. So let's see, in number 7, the first part, the red part, what do they have in common? Well, I'm going to start writing down here. They have an a squared in common. They have a d squared in common. Let's see, 42 and 147. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Is 147, is it divisible by 7? Let's see. That'd give me a 2. That's 14, so 21, right? So I think I can pull out a 7 in both of those. Okay, leaving me with, let's see, what am I left with? I'm left with a 6c plus 21d. Let me make sure that's right. Let's work backwards. If I go back in, I get 42 a squared d squared c. 7 times 21 gets me my 147 a squared. Yeah, so that's good. So that's the first part. Now let's focus on the blue part. Let's see what they have in common. See, 36 and 126. Let's see if 126 is divisible by 6. Okay, 2, 12. Yeah, we get 21 again. 21 seems like it's pretty common. So we're going to pull out a 6. See, they both have an x in common. They both have a d squared in common. So what does that leave me? Especially if I pull out a negative 6. It's going to leave me with 6c. Let's see, I took out the negative, so this becomes plus. So 126, we said it was 21d. So when we put this all together, which I'll put it all together in green, we get 7a squared d squared 6c plus 21d. Okay, let me move myself out of the way here. That's going to help me. All right, so now I'm up here. Hello. And then we put the other one in, which will be minus 6x d squared times 6c plus 21d. Okay, we see what's in the parentheses is the same. So 7a squared d squared minus 6xd squared times 6c plus 21d.